Imagine a soldier, young, disciplined, and filled with unshakable loyalty to his country. He steps onto an island dense with jungle, where every rustle of leaves, every distant screech of a bird, and every snapping twig could signify the approach of an enemy. Now imagine that the war he is fighting ends. Decades ago. The world celebrates peace, nations rebuild, families reunite, and yet he remains unaware, trapped in a jungle of his own solitude and unwavering duty. This is the story of Hiro Onoda, a soldier who continued to fight World War II for 30 years, not because of madness, but because of devotion, training, and a mind that refused to accept the end of war. His eyes scanned the forest as if it were a living, breathing adversary. Each shadow seemed to move with intent. Every gust of wind through the trees sounded like distant enemy movement. Hiro had no radio, no direct contact with command, no way to verify the world outside. His reality was confined to the jungle, where survival and duty merged into one relentless existence. Hiro Onoda was born in 1922 in Kochi, a quiet town in Japan where honor, discipline, and loyalty were not just virtues. They were a way of life. As a boy, Hiro often wandered the hills and forests, practicing imaginary battles with sticks and bamboo poles. Entire armies of enemies would appear in his mind, sometimes even entire cities to defend or conquer. His teachers noticed his intensity. While other children played, Hiro rehearsed military drills for hours. His imagination was vivid. He could see enemy ships on distant horizons, hear cannon fire over the mountains, and feel the thrill of imagined battles as though they were real. Night after night, under the cicadas' relentless hum, Hiro dreamed of war strategy and heroism. These early exercises of imagination and discipline would later sustain him in a jungle where reality and hallucination began to blur. Absurdly detailed thought. Sometimes he imagined the stars themselves as a map of enemy positions, connecting constellations in his mind to track movements that didn't exist. The forest around him became a living chessboard. Each tree a piece, each animal a potential informant or threat. In 1944, Hiro was officially deployed to Lubang Island in the Philippines. His orders were clear. Do not surrender, observe the enemy, sabotage when possible, survive at all costs, await instructions from your superior. He stepped into a jungle alive with sounds, smells, and unseen dangers. Vines seemed to move like hands. The humidity clung to his skin. Insects buzzed incessantly, some sharp enough to draw blood. Within days, Hiro adapted, blending into the environment. He could move without rustling leaves, cross rivers without a single sound, and sleep in the open without leaving traces. Imagine details. At night, the Baipu, moonlight would fall on the treetops, creating silhouettes that Hiro swore were enemy soldiers. Sometimes he would rehearse battle strategies against invisible opponents, silently issuing orders to an army only he could see. Every encounter, real or imagined, sharpened his senses. A fallen branch became a potential ambush. A shadow at dusk became an enemy patrol. Each day demanded alertness, creativity, and a mind constantly at war. Survival was not just physical, it was psychological. Hiro lived off coconuts, wild fruits, small animals, and occasionally rice stolen stealthily from local villages. He became a master of camouflage, weaving himself into the patterns of the forest so completely that birds would land beside him without fear. Every day he built, repaired, or reinforced traps, some so complex that he would forget he had set them, only to be amazed when they functioned, flawlessly months later. Absurdly detailed imaginary events. During storms, Hiro imagined rivers as enemy fortresses and raindrops as bullets falling around him. In his mind, he launched raids against entire imaginary battalions, sometimes negotiating with phantom allies and enemies alike. His own shadow became a lieutenant. He whispered strategies to it, arguing over tactics, celebrating victories no one else could witness. Years passed in cycles of monotony, terror, and strategy, each day indistinguishable from the last, yet each essential for survival. His body hardened, muscles tore and healed, his reflexes sharpened to the point where even the slightest movement in the jungle caught his attention instantly. Leaflets arrived from Japan, carried by unknown hands. "The war is over. Surrender immediately." Hiru read them, stared at them, then set them aside. Orders came from his commanding officer, and until he personally received word, he would not cease his mission. The forest became a living battleground in his mind. Trees whispered commands, rivers murmured advice, shadows formed formations of imaginary enemy units. Absurd extended imagination. Onita sometimes held councils with these shadow officers, discussing which imaginary villages to liberate, which enemy generals to ambush. He even wrote invisible battle plans in the air, drawing invisible maps with sticks in the mud. When he saw villagers, he imagined them as undercover enemy agents. He studied them, noted their movements, calculated probabilities of ambush, then moved silently back into the trees. Over decades, his imagination merged with reality. Rain, wind, sun, and insects became part of a theater of war where Hiru was both actor and audience, strategist and soldier. Time lost meaning. Days merged into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. Hiru adapted fully to the rhythm of the jungle. Nights were spent sharpening sticks, whispering to imaginary enemies, rehearsing battles he would never fight. He even imagined victory parades for battles that never happened. Absurd psychological expansions. Hiru envisioned entire phantom armies moving silently in the underbrush. Occasionally, he would attack these armies with clever maneuvers, leaving imaginary casualties in the dirt. He had conversations with invisible generals, planning campaigns that spanned islands that did not exist. Nature itself became part of the war. A fallen branch was an ambush. A passing deer was a messenger. The wind carried secrets from phantom allies. His survival skills became so acute that he could predict weather, find water, and move unseen with almost supernatural precision. In 1974, Major Taniguchi, his former commanding officer, arrived on Lubong Island. Hiru was finally confronted with the reality that the war had ended decades ago. 30 years of jungle warfare, hallucinations, imaginary armies, and obsessive duty came to an end. He surrendered reluctantly, still half in disbelief that peace existed outside his imagined battlefield. Returning to Japan, Hiru was greeted with astonishment, media frenzy, and historical fascination. He became a living legend. The man who fought a war that no one else knew had ended. Absurd imaginative finale. In Hiru's mind, as he left the jungle, the invisible armies saluted him, the phantom generals bowed, and the battlefield dissolved into the serene landscapes of real Japan, blending fantasy and reality for the first time in decades. Hiru Onoda's story is a tale of loyalty, belief, survival, and the blurred line between reality and imagination. He turned the jungle into a battlefield, his mind into a war machine, and his life into a story almost too extraordinary to believe. History is filled with hidden, unbelievable tales like his, waiting for us to discover, question, and marvel at the extremes of human experience. Call to action. If you want to uncover more strange, hidden, and shocking historical events, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Every story has secrets waiting to be revealed.